Hello, I am Jessica. It was late evening when I met him. He was sitting alone on a wooden bench outside a small tea shop, staring at nothing in particular. I asked him what he was thinking about. He smiled slightly and said something I didn't forget. I don't think she sees me the way she used to. He wasn't talking about anger. He wasn't talking about distance. He was talking about invisibility. That's when I started noticing something deeper in men over 60. Not what they lose, but how they slowly disappear inside relationships without even realizing it. And what shocked me most was this: it wasn't age that did it, it was behavior, small things, repeated for years, things that feel harmless, but completely change how a woman feels a man's presence. And today I want to talk about those things, not as criticism, but as awareness. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. After 60, stop doing this one thing, over explaining yourself. Most men don't realize how often they justify their actions, why they did something, why they didn't do something, why they were late, why they made a decision. It feels responsible, it feels polite, but emotionally, it sends a different signal. It starts to sound like uncertainty, like a man trying to defend his own space in the world. I once knew a man who said, "If I don't explain everything, she might think I don't care." But what he didn't see was that the more he explained, the more he sounded unsure of himself. And over time, something shifted. Not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly. She stopped reacting the same way. Because clarity creates attraction. Over-explaining creates distance. Women don't need every detail of your reasoning. They need to feel your presence is steady enough that it doesn't require constant explanation. After 60, stop trying to be too easy to deal with. Many men believe peace comes from avoiding disagreement, so they soften everything. They agree quickly. They avoid expressing strong opinions. They step back from anything that creates tension. At first, it feels like harmony, but over time, something else happens. The man slowly loses shape in the relationship. No edges, no resistance, no depth. I remember a man telling me, "I thought I was making life easier for her, but I think I just stopped being someone she could feel." That line explains everything. Because emotional connection doesn't come from constant agreement. It comes from presence, and presence needs texture, even disagreement, even contrast. Without that, a man becomes emotionally smooth, and eventually emotionally unnoticeable. After 60, stop solving everything immediately. This is where most men misunderstand themselves. A problem appears, and their instinct is to fix it. A situation arises, and they step in. It comes from decades of responsibility, providing, protecting, managing life. But relationships are not only about solutions, they are about timing. I once heard a man say, "Before she even finished explaining the problem, I already gave her the answer." He paused and said, "And somehow, she went quiet after that." That silence wasn't agreement, it was emotional withdrawal. Because sometimes people don't want solutions first, they want to feel understood first. When you rush to fix everything, you skip the emotional layer. And over time, she stops bringing things to you. Not because you can't handle them, but because she no longer feels emotionally met in the process. Sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is not fix it immediately, but stay present long enough for her to feel heard. After 60, stop becoming predictable in your reactions. Many men settle into emotional routine. Same tone, same responses, same expressions. It feels stable. But stability without depth becomes predictability. And predictability removes curiosity. I remember a man saying, "She already knows exactly what I'll say before I say it." And he didn't say it with pride. Because when someone can predict your emotional response too easily, they stop leaning into you. They stop being curious about you, not because you're wrong, but because nothing feels new anymore. Emotional presence doesn't mean chaos, it means aliveness. A man who still thinks before he responds. A man who still carries depth in his silence. A man who is not just repeating himself through habits. Because once you become predictable, you stop being experienced in the moment. You become expected. After 60, stop underestimating your stillness. Many men think value comes from doing more, talking more, explaining more, engaging more. But sometimes, the most powerful shift happens when a man simply stops overfilling space. I once met a man who said, "I stopped trying to fill every silence." At first, nothing changed, but slowly, something did. People started listening more carefully when he spoke. They started paying attention to his pauses. His presence started feeling heavier, not lighter. because stillness is not absence, stillness is control. It says, I don't need to perform to exist here. And that energy is deeply noticeable, not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakable. And when you connect all of this together, something becomes clear. It was never about becoming someone new. It was about removing the habits that slowly hide who you already are. After 60, a man doesn't lose attraction in one moment. He loses it in small behaviors, small adjustments, small misunderstandings about what creates connection. But when those habits are removed, something returns. Presence, not effort, not performance, just presence. And when a man is fully present again, people don't just see him differently, they feel him differently. And that changes everything. He sat quietly across from me, staring into his tea like it had answers. Then he said, I feel like I'm still doing everything right, but something still feels off between us. That line stayed with me because it was never about doing things wrong. It was about slowly losing presence without noticing it. After 60, stop over-explaining yourself. One man told me he explains everything, why he's late, why plans changed, why something didn't happen. He thought it showed responsibility. But over time, he noticed something strange. He no longer sounded confident. He sounded uncertain. And when certainty fades, attraction often fades with it. After 60, stop trying to be too agreeable. Another man said, I just say yes to avoid conflict now. But peace without honesty isn't peace, it's distance. Because when you disappear from your own opinions, the connection starts to disappear too. After 60, stop rushing to solve everything. A man once interrupted his wife's story with solutions. He thought he was helping, but she simply said, I didn't need a fix. I needed you to listen. And in that moment, he understood. Presence matters more than answers. After 60, stop becoming predictable. When she already knows every word you'll say, something quiet dies in the connection. Not love, but curiosity. Because in the end, it was never about doing more. It was about removing what blocks your presence. And when a man becomes fully present again, he doesn't chase connection. It comes back to him naturally. In the end, it was never about doing more. And it was never about becoming someone else. It was about something much quieter, something most men don't notice until much later. Because after 60, a man doesn't lose connection in one big moment. He loses it in small habits he never questioned. In the way he explains too much, in the way he solves too fast, in the way he stops holding his own emotional shape. And slowly, without realizing it, he starts disappearing inside the very relationship he is trying to hold together. But here is the truth most people miss. A woman doesn't stop noticing a man because he is older. She stops noticing him when she stops feeling him. Not his words, not his effort, but his presence. And presence is not something you do. It is something you either carry or slowly give away. Because the moment a man starts trying too hard to be understood, he stops being felt. And the moment he stops being felt, everything else quietly changes. But when a man returns to himself, when he stops over-explaining, stops over-fixing, stops over-adjusting, something shifts again. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. People start to notice him again, without even knowing why. Because he didn't become new. He simply became present again. And in the end, that is what was never lost, only forgotten.